What's up, guys? This is Psychathletes. We're back with another podcast, and we have a super special guest today. His name's Erik. I had the privilege of playing for him. He was one of my favorite coaches, and he was one of my first ideas to have as a guest on this podcast because he was just different from a lot because he had a good personal relationship with his players, and he really understood them, and he understood that winning is not important when you're playing amateur baseball. Winning is not important in travel club baseball. What is more important is developing your players. So Erik was he founded the Kinetic Performance Institute this year, and he founded Dub Baseball, which I played for in 2012. You were a scout. Are you still a scout for the Washington Nationals, Erik?
Yeah, I was a scout for about 4 years doing some kind of associate work with them. I haven't done it in a few years just as kind of blew up. It just became not real feasible to do all of it. So
yeah, obviously you got a lot going on. I was so stoked when I played for him. I'm like, man, I'm playing for a scout for the Nationals. This is awesome. I'm gonna go play for the Nationals in 6 years. But he coached for Live Oak. They were really successful while he was there. That was the high school I went to for my first year in college. And he has a master's degree from St. Mary's College in health and physical education, a bachelor's in sociology from Sonoma State, and teaching credentials in physical education and social sciences. Anything else you want to add? Anything you want to talk about your program, Erik?
no, just really excited to have you on and kind of reconnect with Ryan and love the concept of the podcast. So definitely pretty excited to kind of have a little chat here.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah. Dude, we're super excited because if you guys have been listening to the podcast in the previous, we kind of talked about our last one was like why the majority of coaches suck. And we were just kind of thinking of the best coaches that we had. And like for me personally, I wasn't able to think of a lot. And Ryan was able to bring up your name in like multiple occasions. So super excited to have you on, Erik. It's nice to meet you.
Thank you.
Yeah, so what I wanted to ask you, Erik, is a lot of coaches. So in the club level, we're seeing today is there's this epidemic of like hyper competitive amateur athletes, right? Everyone wants to win. All these coaches are being paid money. You know, they're expected to rake in the players, make money, win tournaments, whatnot, get their players to the next level. But I feel like we've seen a little bit of a decrease in the emphasis on player development. In my opinion, a lot of these programs, you see reaction videos everywhere, coaches getting mad, like, you know, AAU's like this whole different AAU in basketball. It's this whole different monster now than it was. It's all media. It's all for show now. And for club baseball, what I've seen is a lot of these programs, I tried out for a bunch when I got down here, and there were like 200 kids at these tryouts. And I was just like, holy shit, like, how can you really gauge a lot? And they would take the best of the best. And, you know, they had like 4 teams. And I'm like, how can you coach players on a personal level when you have, you know, like a bunch of different teams? And I know Dub had a lot of teams, but you guys have a lot of coaches. And it's different for me because I thought you were very personal, and I thought you gave a lot of attention to even like, you know, I remember some smaller players on the team, like you gave them attention, like you were very personal with them. And I want to like kind of ask you your thoughts on the kind of hyper competitiveness of amateur sports.
Well, I think it's pretty ridiculous. One, you know, is winning important? Yes, in a certain sense, you know, but it kind of boils down to what do you consider a win? Like for me, running a club baseball program and now a large training program of, you know, athletes from all kinds of different clubs, what's a win? To me, like a win is to get a kid to achieve his dreams. And I haven't had any kid ever tell me, okay, my dreams to win the 16-year-old tournament, you know, like their dreams to get to the college level, right? Or to be a Division I player, to be a pro, whatever it is. So then as a coach, you kind of check your ego a little bit and be like, okay, so like my ego doesn't need this win. You know, what's best for this kid to achieve his dreams? And when you kind of keep that in focus and keep that as the goal, it becomes a lot more clear. And it's all about development. It's all about training. It's all about those things. And you know, in the club world, especially in baseball, and I can't really speak to other sports as much because I just don't know that landscape, but obviously know the club baseball landscape pretty well. You know, the model that's kind of become successful with the larger programs is put together these tournament teams from kids from all over, don't have any real huge concept of development, and go try to compete in these tournaments. And I'm not saying that we don't do that to a certain extent, but what I am saying is that when you do that so much and you don't have any development to back it up, then all of a sudden, your end game is not the same end game as the player has. Do they want to win the tournament? Sure, they want to win the tournament, but they want to get to the collegiate and professional levels way more. And kind of the adage I always use with parents, because obviously, we're in a competitive business environment when you run teams and stuff. So, a lot of parents are looking around to different programs, and obviously, we've literally placed hundreds of players. I mean, there's a whole bunch of Pac-12 commits in our facility right now working out. Not one of these coaches have ever asked me like, hey, like how many tournaments you guys win this year, or like what was your 14-year record? No one actually cares about any of that. So that's kind of our mindset towards things. It's all about the players and what their goals are.
I think you have so much more leverage when you're able to say that, because parents are obviously have a huge impact on where their kid is going to play, right? And when you're able to say, look, we have a number of college commits playing like in our training facility, that's so much more leverage that you have to have players come into your training facility. Then we won this X amount of tournaments, blah 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 blah. And what I think that we kind of all noticed when you said I have to kind of ego check myself as like a coach, I think a lot of coaches don't do that, and they don't take into mind and into consideration what you just said of like what the kid wants. So from your experience, what is it that most kind of players really want? Like, what is their main goal that you've kind of found?
Well, they want to have a great experience, right? They want to walk into your facility or your practice or your team and just have a ton of fun and have a great experience. And in our training, we've actually gone towards that group dynamic and a little bit away from the team dynamic, just because kids really do like being in an environment with a whole bunch of other good athletes training hard together, sweating together, doing those things. So they definitely want that. And they want to know that what they're doing is going to get them to that end game, so I know Ryan has mentioned before all the tech that we use in here. We have just an incredible amount of tech that we use, and we don't just have it in here, we use it in here. And we're able to give the kids objective goals like, hey, you want to be a Division I player? Well, 2.1% of high school baseball players play Division I. Guess what? You're a pitcher, you better throw above 90. You're a hitter, we need your exit velocity here. So like we're able to parlay that objective data to help the kids really realize like, hey, like I need to lift, I need to train, I need to do these things to get to my goal. So kind of like this cohesive system we've set up to kind of give the kids some goals first, but then give them like, hey, this is how you get to those goals. Like we have to use these tools we have here to get to those goals. We have strength trainers, we have all these things, and you better commit to that, because like it's one thing to say you want to be a D1 player, but if you're right-handed and you're throwing 81, you're going to tell me you want to be a D1 player. We got to push the gas a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's a lot of. I mean, if you've listened to one of our podcasts, a lot of our philosophies are really setting these goals, and I think for a lot of people and a lot of kids around America, those goals kind of get lost when coaches don't check their ego, especially when they're just trying to win. So
I think egos in coaching is the most dangerous thing in esports. I really do.
Yeah.
We could not agree more. We were talking. I had a coach. We talked about him. We talked about him once or twice. His name was Dave Frazier. He's this old dude, and he absolutely he absolutely hated me, right? And this program, the program that I went to, San Juan, I didn't know any better. And a lot of players are naive, right? You understand, like I didn't have that person to tell me this is what I needed to do, right, to get to the next level. I think the only mention of college sports my coach ever gave to me, he's like, okay, so what schools do you like or think you can play at? I'll call him up, I'll give you I'll talk to him. I'm like, okay, that seems awesome, coach. But at the time, I'm like, I'm not focusing on being a better player right now. It's never how can I make myself better as a player. It's always how can I help my team win. And it's a good thought. Like it's well-intentioned. Like we want our high school team to win, but there has to be some balance at that point, because what you said earlier was so perfect. You align your interests with that of your player, right? I want to win in high school, but I also want to go to the next level. And if my coach is only helping with one of those things, then we have a problem. You see what I'm saying? Like I wanted to go to the next level, but I wasn't giving the tools to do that, right? So that's basically my input on it.
Like, yeah, when you were saying like how our high school program, I remember our head coach would be like, I played college baseball. I know all of these different schools, yada, yada, yada. In your experience, what have you kind of found that like high school coaches in particular, because that's like the majority of our audience, how much power do they actually have in helping a player get to the next level in regards to like the social aspect of it? Like, do you place any focus on that, or is it more so first attaining your goals, figuring out what you actually want to do, and giving you guys all the abilities to attain that?
I mean, I think the question on like how much power does the high school coach have in that process, that's super contextual and actually a really tricky question for me to answer. But I will say that with the rise of club baseball, and I know it's a lot different in Northern California, especially in our section, which is Central Coast section. There's just a ton of rules on high schools and the amount they can kind of be with players in the off season. And I know down south where you guys are, the rules are a lot looser, so the high school coach does have a lot more power in your area. In our area, they really can't have contact with their kids in the off season. So much of the club guys have really taken that lead role up here as far as being the guy that would place the kids at the upper levels, and I think it puts high school coaches in a real precarious position, especially now in COVID. If the season happens this spring for the high school teams, kids can still play for their clubs during their high school season. And I think that's super almost dangerous to a certain extent on kind of, because there is an adversarial relationship between clubs and high schools a lot. And I think because those interests a lot of times can be aligned different places. During COVID, we actually had a Zoom with a whole bunch of local high school coaches, and there were a whole bunch of different topics. But when we got to recruiting, basically I said, hey, like, do you want me to tell you, like the schools we're talking to, what the process is with these players, or do you, like, because I would say up here, the high school coaches, unless you're at a really, really top flight program, aren't very involved in the recruiting process. So, we're talking about goals being aligned and stuff. Their goals is to win and kind of do all those things. And a kid in our programs, their goal is to develop and get to the next level. So there can be some disconnect there.
So would you, one second, would you almost say that maybe high school sports, in terms of baseball, maybe not football because there's not this club, but definitely in like basketball, baseball, do you think it could have a negative, just as a whole, in their interest being aligned, a negative impact on a player's future?
That disconnect, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure, right? And this is where things get dangerous for the high school coach. If a kid's having a fantastic experience with his club, he thinks the development's better there, and then now all of a sudden the rules are getting bent a little bit with COVID. I think that you see them get pulled in different directions a lot, and we've even had kids say, like, I just wish I could play dub full time, and because they get to their high school and they make them take off their dub shirt and they they tell them, oh, that stuff you learned over there is stupid. I don't understand why you guys are doing all that stuff.
Yeah.
You don't need all that tech, and it's a regressive kind of rooted in old school theory kind of mindset. And the thing about kids these days with the amount of information that's available to you all on the internet and through everything now, you can go find out all the best ways to do things like that, so the kids' BS detector these days is a lot higher than maybe 20, 30 years ago. So kids are
seeing
aware
through
of what's going on. Yeah. Kids follow Driveline on social media. Kids follow these different programs on social media, and they know, like, hey, these guys are doing this stuff. Why are we sitting here doing first and third place for the fifth day in a row?
Do you kind of see a shift starting to happen between actually playing, like putting all your energy into high school towards, okay, I'm starting to realize there's all these other resources out for me that are probably better. There's actually coaches out there that want me to succeed, not just win, but get to the next level. Are you starting to see more like momentum and more of a shift of players starting to put more of their energy into, this club and training type programs like yours instead of high school?
Up here, yes. Just for the kind of those reasons I said earlier, that there's a lot of really restrictive rules on high school coaches up here. And they can do very, very little with their players outside of that high school season. I know down where you guys are, it's a lot looser. So I think the lines are probably blurred a lot more down there. But up here, like a kid plays for his high school, he's with them 3, maybe 4 months in the year. He's with us full time the rest of the time. So he's actually with us way more than he is his high school program,
Yeah.
And so, we are seeing a little bit of a pull there. And to be honest, and I'm pretty flagrant about this, that only happens in the off season. During the high school season, I think that is super important that kid has a really good high school experience. It's much different than the club experience. It means something different they're with his buddies, the area they live, all those things. You know, on a club team, obviously we're getting guys from all over. So the high school experience is really important. But yes, do I see a shift going on away from that up here? For sure.
I wanted to steer the conversation because you mentioned this back and forth like pull between club and coaches and high school coaches, and I can't imagine the effect that's going on, like thoughts that are going on in a high school player's mind. You know, he's still developing and he has to listen to like how many different coaches, you know, and they're telling him he's wrong, they're telling him he's wrong. And I just wanted to steer the conversation more towards you know, what's going on inside a player's head. And I wanted to ask you, how do you deal with a player, or how do you identify, help, and approach a player who seems to be in a rut, who seems to be struggling? You know, because I remember when I was struggling with you guys, or I was like, I hadn't gotten a hit, you guys would tell me something, it would work. I don't know. It was like magical. That's why I like think so highly of you guys. But I just want to know what's going through your head when you see a player that is not having a good time out there.
Well, first you got to empathize with them, right? I mean, this game is inherently ultra difficult, and you know, especially as you're growing up and you're going through puberty at the young ages, and then you have these expectations, and now we're seeing that dynamic that you're describing with the early commit stuff, you know, and a 15-year-old kid stressing out because he hasn't committed to a college yet, you know. And so, you know, the first thing to understand is, all right, what is he going through? You know, and what exactly is his condition? And then you got to know the kids too. And that's really where kind of we try to separate ourselves, is have that personal connection with them. They're not just a transaction. They're not just a jersey. So what can I do? Because I know this kid so well, like, how do I push his buttons? You know, and you really can't figure out how to push a kid's individual buttons. Like, I always tell people, like, hey, what's your coaching philosophy? And I'm like, do whatever's best for the player, you know? So like, to do that, you have to get to know them. And the way I might've coached you, you know, that might've been a situation where I put my hand around you and kind of, you know, just have like a little bit of a softer approach. And then there's other kids that need a foot up their butt. You know? So it just, you got to learn the kid and figure out what makes them tick to coach them well. And instead of having that philosophy of like, this is how I do things, you play this way for me. You know, I think the truly great coaches are able to adjust their philosophy to the players individually.
Yeah. And I kind of noticed that, like, you get to a program and a lot of times, like, these coaches have one way of doing things. You fuck up, you run. Right? There's punishment for messing up. And I think that's so dangerous for a player to have it ingrained in their mind that failure means that you will be punished. That means you will be taken out of the game. I never remember at a young age being taken out of the game for a mistake when I was playing for you. And I know that stuff happens. For a lot of club teams, have you seen these coaches that are super hard on their players and that demand excellence from them during like tournaments and whatnot? And you just look at them and you're like, wow.
Yeah, I mean, you see it all the time, and it really kind of goes back to our first topic where we talked about what's the end game, you know? So, like, because there's a whole bunch of different ways to get this done as far as winning games and getting players to kind of work hard and stuff like that. But, you know, you're basically faced with two choices as a coach. Do you want them to believe in the message, or do you want them to be afraid of the message? Both those things can end up at the same place, but, you know, we know a lot in kind of like psycho-emotional learning that, you know, it's going to mean a lot more to the player, and they're going to be more better invested if they believe in the message. You know, you still might be able to get a similar result out of them on the other end if you're going to scare the hell out of them into the message. But if they believe in it, it's going to have a lot more lasting effect.
Yeah, like even when it comes to positive and like negative reinforcement, I feel like I see the majority of coaches when, say, you lose a game, right, or you don't perform to the coach's standards, they'll say run, or they'll say do this certain thing. And there hasn't been a lot done when it comes to like positive reinforcement. When you guys get, you know, the win that you guys are looking for, or you hit the goals that your team has been striving for, have you kind of been using that as an advantage of using like, okay, you guys hit these goals, we're going to be able to, you know, we're going to give you this sort of positive reinforcement, whether it's like a day off of practice or whatever. Like, have you kind of been looking into that at all?
Yeah, so like it's probably from a team point of view, there's a whole bunch of different ways to do that. But I'll kind of talk about the training side of things. So what we've actually done with our hitting training is we've gamified it. So it's a flow chart that we have in our facility, and they all start at a certain place based on their weakest number, basically. And then we say, hey, like, here's your goal. You got to get your attack angle to here. You got to get your bat speed to here. And then once you achieve that goal, then you move to the next level, which is a whole nother layer of metrics they have to accomplish, and then they can kind of get up to the top group, which is like the challenge group. So we've kind of taken that concept of setting objective goals and trying to give them positive reinforcement to work towards, and kind of built our whole hitting system around it.
Cool.
Really cool.
That's super interesting. Yeah.
There's
It's
no
like competition within the team, huh?
Yeah, it's competition
But
within
it's healthy
each other.
competition.
Yeah, but then a competition within themselves. It's like, hey, like here's a weak number for you. Here's your goal. If you get out of it, you get to go to the next level. Just like that's why
Exactly.
kids like video games. Kids like video games because they get to compete. You know.
Yeah.
I mean, when it comes down to it, that's what they're doing. They're sitting in the clubhouse right now and they're screaming at each other with PlayStation controls in their hands. You know, like they want to compete. So as a coach, if you can use that competitive nature of the athlete and kind of drive development with that, you got a pretty powerful thing on your hands.
That's a really cool concept. I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're trying to do it more and more. It's obviously it's a little hard when you're training the amount of athletes we are, but we're getting there.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk about what did I want to talk about?
I mean, as a scout, right? As a past scout, when it comes to our audience, right? They're probably looking at, they're like, okay, how do I get to the next level? Because that's the majority of the goals, right? So as somebody with that experience, what could you tell kind of our audience what you guys are looking for in particular when it comes to not only physical play, but also mindset?
Yeah, as far as physical play, like it's really, things have gotten very objective and things have gotten very number based. And I know, and this is actually kind of that push and pull between high school and club now and high school and training facilities is, we emphasize numbers in our facility a lot. We know certain numbers have to be achieved to play at a certain level, and all that data is available. So trying to convince a high school coach that wants to run bunt plays for 2 hours that, hey, like that doesn't really matter in the player's development. That's a tough bridge to encounter. And then as far as mindset goes, this is something we talk about a lot with the players, because a lot of guys get to that number, but then there's still that little bit of a disconnect with them as a player. And they want to know why. Why am I not getting recruited? Why am I not getting signed? Why am I not getting committed? And this is a much more difficult battle to fight with a player, because the numbers are the numbers. It's super objective, right? And then you get to that subjective area of mindset, and it's like, well, like, there's a kid in here earlier that we've been had in here for years, and I still haven't gotten through to him really well. It's like, hey, like you have to have a certain amount of poise and confidence to you, and it's a very charismatic kind of a thing when you do have those things and the eyes are drawn to you, like it's really easy from a scouting point of view to walk up to a field and pick out the best player on the field very quickly by the way he carries himself. There's just something about really good players from that mindset point of view. And it's all the cliche words, like, it's toughness, it's aggression, it's energy. It's all those things that we know to be true, but how do we get more kids to embody those things? That's a really, really kind of tough part of coaching.
So what I've kind of experienced is a lot of coaches don't really place an emphasis. They say, oh, you got to be confident out there. You got to walk out with that confidence. I'm like, well, where do I get it? You guys aren't telling me I'm doing anything good. Like, am I supposed to just like make it magically appear out of nowhere? And that's something I struggled with in college. Definitely is always trying to have this confidence that I just had no, like, I'm like, where am I going to get it? I haven't played good for like 2 fucking years. Like, and I think that's with a lot of kids. And I think what you guys did well when I was playing for you guys always put me out there. You always have faith in me. And a lot of programs, they don't throw the kids out there because they're not playing well, and it comes down to like playing time and whatnot. And then if a kid's not playing as much, where's his confidence go? It's gone now. And you give them that opportunity. They go in the game and then they're like, okay, I have to do this. I have to get this done, or else I'm not going to play. I'm not going to have confidence anymore. My confidence is going to plummet. A lot of coaches, we said this before, I said this like many times, they say that they break you down to build you back up, but they never build you back up, right? So in your perspective or in your position, how do you build that confidence in players? Is that something you think coaches can do?
I mean, I think it's something definitely coaches should try to do. Can any coach be 100%, even the best ones at that? No. I mean, I think just inherently the nature of baseball is so difficult, and it's such a freaking confidence wrecker, because you're going to fail a ton, and it's really hard to get hot in baseball and stay consistent. So I think really the goal for coaches should be to kind of go back to what I said earlier, build strong relationships with the player. So when you do kind of tell the player, like, hey, like, you need to weather the storm, out of this. They believe in you, because I think players are naturally going to be super hard on themselves anyway. They're competitive. They want to do great. They're trying to reach their goals, so they're going to put a lot of innate pressure on themselves. So when they are in those kind of bad ones, those bad runs, if they kind of believe in your message, like, hey, like stay the course, keep working the process, things will bust out. If they do believe that message, then it's going to be a lot more powerful to kind of help pull them out of those things. But if I'm being perfectly honest, if a coach could figure out how to increase confidence in every player in baseball, they'd be the best in the world. So it's really, really difficult.
I think.
Yeah.
Go on, Parker. You want to say something?
I was going to say it kind of comes from being a coach that the players can actually respect. And when it comes from somebody that the kids can respect, then that information that you're giving them, they're going to take it wholeheartedly and they're going to start to believe it themselves as like a role model that you're portraying. So like something that we've always, that we're kind of trying to do here, like the Psychathletes, the podcast, us as a brand, is give players actual tools to feel confident, to not overthink in these certain, hyper sensitive and hyper like emotions coming upon them, anxiety, just embarrassment, stuff like that. Give them tools to not overthink, to feel very present in the moment. And what we've kind of found, like the best tool is meditation. And whether it's guided meditations, regular meditations, what have you kind of found within that? Have you started to look into it? Have you been teaching your players something like that?
I love that stuff. I love meditation, visualization. I think it's super important. From a team's point of view, it's something that I personally have employed with a lot of teams, especially when I was coaching in college, and where you kind of have a lot of time and you have that super intimate relationship because you're around each other so much. The research is pretty much undeniable on those things as far as the effectiveness of it. Where we've struggled a little bit as a training facility is integrating that. Because obviously you don't have that team environment. You're more of a training environment, and we got kids from all kinds of different clubs. And we had sessions in the summer where we did a lot of breathing exercises. And when I have the pitchers, I definitely do it a lot with them. And then what happens though is you get on this go. We got to kind of get our lift in. We got to get our hitting in. We got to get our throwing in. And it gets put to the back burner. And it's something that myself and my business partner have been talking about a lot. It's like, okay, how do we integrate this in what we're doing and emphasize it, but then also still kind of stay true to what is a training facility, which is basically building big tools. And it's really, really tricky. And kind of the analogy I always give, and I need to check myself in this because I'm not doing a great job of it right now, is, when I give coaches clinics and I'm talking to coaches and we start talking about the mental game, I'll always do the old thing like, hey, like what percentage of baseball is mental? And they all raise their hands. And I've never had, in 18 years of coaching and giving clinics, I've never had a coach tell me under 50%. It's always 50% or above. And then I'll go, okay, how many of you guys spend time on the mental game in practice? And they all go, and they all put their hands down basically, So if we all acknowledge the importance of the mental game in baseball and in development, but then we don't actually invest any time into it, are you really doing your job as a coach? Are you bridging that gap?
Right.
So like, what's the problem there though? Like, is it hard to forgo the physical and the lifting side of that?
That's what I'm saying. Like, so in the training environment we've set up, it's just a different dynamic, right? Like are they coming into our facility to get mental training, or are they coming to our facility to throw 90?
Yeah.
And that's where I'm struggling because by nature I'm a team coach, right? I'm a skill coach. I've coached it. That's how this was all built. We have this new kind of aspect of what we're doing, which is heavy on the training side. So again, like we're trying to find the balance there and try to integrate it but also staying true to who we are, and then also being like, hey, like this is something that maybe is more on the field, like maybe that is something that's practiced in the team environment and not in the training environment,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, what's great about it too is you don't have to be anywhere to do it. Like you can have kids doing it at their own home, right? They can be doing visualizations, they can be doing meditations, they can be learning this stuff. It's just kind of the first part is instilling with them, okay, guys, this is actually important and this actually works. And I think when you're in high school and you're a younger kid, you think about it and you're like, oh, that's just like wooey, like that stuff doesn't really work. But it's giving them examples of like, all right, this person did this and because of that, they got this result and whatnot. So I think it's not just about them doing it. It's also the education side of it. Because I know like when me and Ryan were in high school, like I knew about this stuff, but I would never implement it. It's not like something that I was excited to do. I was excited to lift. I was excited to get big, you know? So I think that's a huge thing. And then one of the things that we really focus on is like the subconscious and how things in your past affect the way that you perform and play. How your self-image that you have has a massive impact on the way that you actually perform in games. And as a coach, like as an actual, you know, role model to these kids, you being able to be that example to them and being able to build their self-esteem up, I think has a huge impact on their confidence already. But what kind of visualization techniques, you mentioned visualization, what kind of visualization techniques would you recommend to, you know, the athletes that you coach?
I'll kind of just, you know, do a quick progression of how I do it with pitchers. You know, we're starting our winter training program in a couple weeks here, and then I'll start integrating the stuff into kind of their winter training just from the pitching side of things. But I think the first thing is just controlling your breathing, right? Learning how to breathe properly is a really important thing, and how to calm yourself down, how to do belly breaths, you know, how to get oxygen in your bloodstream, all that.
Will you show people the belly breaths that you're talking about right now? Because I think I know what you're saying, how, you know, basically most people when they breathe in, they actually suck in their stomach instead of out. Can you kind of show what you're talking about right there?
I mean, most people when they breathe in are going to lift their shoulders, okay? And you can just do it on your own. You feel the tension start getting created in here when you do that, you know? And people are definitely going to do that in high stress situations. Your body goes into fight or flight. It's going to preserve the air. It's going to keep your breath shallow because it doesn't want to use it all up. So that's why whenever you see me take a mound trip in a stressful situation, I'll always put my hand on the pitcher's in between his shoulder blades to kind of just calm him down because he's up in here a lot, you know? And so when you kind of take that belly breath, you just want to basically fill up your diaphragm and kind of get it as deep into your belly as you can, and you'll see the shoulders stay low. And then not only are you taking more air in, you're able to disperse more oxygen into the bloodstream, which is going to inherently calm you down. Because you're fighting off that natural reaction of your body in stressful situations to preserve everything and kind of go towards the center. So that's kind of the basic premise of a belly breath or a deep diaphragm breath.
I think
effective.
I think that's awesome that you're actually like showing people that. I think one of the best tools that somebody can do to actually artificially kind of implement that stress and that super like scary situation that they're in, if they're in like the bottom of the ninth inning, right, and they're coming into close, and they're like, you know, runners on full base, like runners about to score or something like that. What you can artificially do that we've kind of found is like cold therapy and like taking cold showers.
Sure.
So that you have the cold shower on, you turn it on, and you're facing resistance immediately in your head, and you're like, shit, I don't want to do this shit. Like I need to do other things. And you face that resistance head on. But once you do it, you go in, and then you really try to focus your breathing right there. And if you're able to do that every single day as an athlete and as a player, then you're basically artificially placing that stressful situation inside yourself already. So when it happens in real life, you're much, much more prepared. But I like that. I like that shoulder grip thing right there. That's things that I think, like whether it's parents or things like that, they don't understand. Even athletes probably don't know what you're doing when you're doing that. But it's so key. It's so important. So that's really cool.
Yeah, and then we kind of progress as far as the training environment. You know, from that breathing, then I'll just lay them on the floor and say, hey, like focus on your breath, and then as soon as the distraction enters your mind, restart. You know, and in our facility, there's a lot of stuff going on. It's very easy to get distracted. So it kind of just trying to teach them to center themselves first. You have to be able to focus on your breath first before you can kind of start mastering anything else. And then we'll kind of bring in the visualization side of things. And you know, I have this like process, I guess, with the visualization where you start super simple as far as like just see a candle burning, you know, and then kind of just increase the sensory input from there. And then kind of get better at it, because visualization is a learned skill, just like fielding the ground ball or pitching mechanics are, you know, it's a learned skill. So, you know, that it'll get all the way to the point to where they have a breathing and visualization process between each pitch. So it's kind of a build up that I do with them.
All right,
Super
Erik,
interesting.
I understand you got a busy day ahead of you, so I'm gonna go ahead and wrap things up. But I think what you said earlier about a lot of coaches, like you guys all acknowledge, like everyone knows that the mental game's super important. But I think the fact that you acknowledge that coaches don't do shit about it is really cool. It's really mature, and that you could be better. And I feel like a lot of coaches around the world or around the country wouldn't even acknowledge that fact. You know, they would say, okay, yeah, they can do that on their own time. But I think it's a huge part of the game of all sports that's untapped. And I think training in that area can help a lot of athletes that struggle with, like, you know, you know, you said those guys that have that disconnect that are almost there but are not, I think that can propel them to that state, to that confident state. And I think that's really cool that you mentioned that. And I feel like you're going to act on your word and, you know, start implementing more mental training strategies and stuff. And I think that's really cool. But that'll do it for today's podcast, guys.
Yeah. How can people find you, Erik? What can we do? You want to send us over a link?
Yeah, I mean, social media kind of depend on where you want to go, but I don't have personal stuff. I just kind of have all the business stuff. So
I can link your Instagram.
Yeah, Facebook, Dub Baseball, KPI, Kinetic Performance Institute. Same thing on Instagram, Kinetic Performance Institute or Dub Baseball. Same thing on Twitter, @Dub Baseball, @KPIMH. So that's where you can find me and us, and websites www.kpimh.com. And, you know, we have, you know, big built out website with all the different stuff as far as the training and the teams and all that stuff.
Don't worry about the links. I'll link it all in the description below. Cool. Thank you so much, Erik, for being on, and that's it for today, guys. We'll catch you later.
Appreciate it, guys. I'll hop on anytime. Just let me know.